Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Whitney Stoll. I'm the DC Post first Vice President, and welcome to our last First Friday webinar of the year, but also Happy New Year. Please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself, add any contact information, LinkedIn bio, whatever you'd like. I will say if you'd like to save the chat at the end, feel free to go to File and then go down to Save and then click on Chat so you can save the chat at the end so you can get all the contact information if you weren't able to. But let's dive into the overall webinar. So it is welcome to the January 1st Friday luncheon session. Joined by me is Bree Beal, our programs director, and Jim D'Amelia, who is hosting our webinar today and will be monitoring the chat. So we have over 100 registered participants from all over the world. So I know you're excited to be here for this program. So join me in welcoming our guest presenter, Ben Wom, who will be sharing attracting and securing transitioning military talent from the global recruiters out of Charlottesville. So this fantastic presentation will uncover what you need to know about the differences between a career in the military and in the private industry, and what veterans in private industry need to know on how to be successful in their career transitions. But first, I would like to start to welcoming you to our First Friday series. It's provided to you through SAME's commitment to offering the AEC community effective training, development, and networking programs. The DC Post is helping sustain the future of the profession with these monthly education-focused sessions to deliver topical and relevant content to our industry. So thank you for all that are joining us. So as I mentioned, use the chat to introduce yourself, share your LinkedIn profile, add any contact information for anyone throughout the presentation. And as well as feel free to ask questions so we can address them during the Q&A portion at the end. Again, it's a lunchtime learning session if you're joining us on the East Coast, so feel free to eat your lunch during the program. You are joining today to offer this virtual program to our community, regardless of where you're attending from. So let's start with a moment of silence to remember our active duty military, first responders, and all who need our care and thoughts throughout the world right now. Thank you. And so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So now it's time for the main program. Please note this program will provide one professional development hour from the DC Post. Look for an email with the subject line document delivery from SAME DC and Eventbrite with a copy of our program slides, your PDH certificate, and a list of opt-in attendees who pre-registered for this session. We are recording this webinar and we will post a video to our website later on. So I'm not going to read the learning objectives on the slide since most of you saw the objectives when you registered. Instead, I'm going to introduce to you our featured panelists who will introduce their team in just a minute. While I do the introductions, if you have not done so already, please use the chat to introduce yourself, share the contact information, and where you're from. This is your webinar series to help you learn about the special topic, as well as help you expand your business network throughout the program. So again, use the chat, share comments, and ask questions so we can address them at the end of the conference, at the end of the session. So now I would like to introduce the presenter for today. So Ben Wom is the managing partner of Global Recruiters of Charlottesville in Charlottesville, Virginia. He started the firm in August of 2021 and has been very successful in finding talented engineers, planners, architects, and construction administrative professionals to meet the critical needs of his clients. Prior to starting the firm, Ben spent 26 plus years in the U.S. Air Force, finishing up as the Army Corps District Commander at Kandahar Air Base in Afghanistan. He was also the first 628 Mission Support Group Commander for Joint Base Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina. And since retiring in 2012, he spent time in higher education with FEMA prior to starting Global global recruiters in Charlottesville. He's a registered engineer in the state of Ohio, South Carolina, and Virginia. While not recruiting, he enjoys distilleries, golfing, volunteering for youth programs, and serving in his church. So Ben, thank you again for joining us. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to you and your team to kick the program off.
Appreciate it. And I promise I have not been enjoying distillery part of the presentation, so this should be a very hopefully entertaining presentation. And also, I've seen a lot of great names come into the chat, so it's great to see old friends in the chat and to meet new people. So thank you, everybody, for the time you're taking out of your day to go through this presentation with me, and look forward to seeing what we can do in this. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Hopefully, I'm not exactly challenged when it comes to computers, but we'll see how it goes. All righty. Give it a second real quick. So a few of you have actually attended this presentation before as we've done this. I've done this different forms of this. I did it at the Blue Ridge Post. I've done it at with a few other people at the Small Business Conference. I've done it at a couple of different entities in different forms at other times. But as I do this presentation, I keep adding things that I learned to it as we go through there. So it's about 23 slides. We're going to go through them in about 40 minutes. And then we'll definitely take the time for your question. This is a very dynamic issue, very dynamic situation right now with transition and talent and just talent in general. And before I go into the slides, this is the latest issue of ENR and came out December 25th. And one of the articles I thought was really amazing in there is there's an article at the end of this thing about cost escalations and talent being an issue in the global challenges. And it's amazing to me. And I thought, wow, we got a shortage of talent here in the U.S. It's global. It's global. It's everywhere from China to India to Asia to Europe to Australia has a huge talent shortfall. So this is not something that's just systemic to our nation or to our industry or our specific area. It's across the board. And so obviously to find talent is going to be challenging, and to grow talent is even more challenging in this environment. So real quickly, agenda, like the Air Force used to tell us, tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. So here's the agenda as we go through there. I'm going to start out with the origin story, because some of you know me and probably rolling your eyes right now. For those of you who don't know me, real quick, you heard my background, 26 years in the Air Force. I did 3.5 years at the Citadel, where I went to college as their facility, vice president of facilities. Family came up, we moved to Charlottesville, Virginia. Love the location up here. It's a great location, a really good college town. Went to work with FEMA, which required travel a lot. And at the end of that, I really enjoyed my time with FEMA. It's a great mission. But I said, you know what, I need to think about myself and my family. And my wife said, you've been traveling a lot lately. So bottom line is I came back here, was going to quote unquote retire and consult. And then I kept getting inundated with recruiters. And I would talk to these recruiters, internal recruiters, external recruiters, and finally franchise recruiters. And at the end of the day, in one of the conversations, I got frustrated. I said, look, you guys don't understand what we do and how we do it. So why do you approach me this stuff? He goes, and he asked the one question that probably would have been the worst question to ask me if I didn't want to do this, which is, well, okay, you got an opinion on this. Can you do better? Okay, yeah, I think I can. So I bought a franchise with this company, and I've been going for about 2.5 years. It's actually a lot of fun because I like working with people, and being an engineer, I see engineers advance. But that's not what this conversation is about. What I hear in my conversations a lot is what people are saying. And this is what the talent says, but I've heard this a lot from military. So I want to bring these questions up to you. I'm not going to answer them now, but I'm going to bring these questions up to you to let you have a look at them, because I've heard these questions in some way, form in 100 different interviews that I've done over the course of the last 2 years. And quite frankly, I've heard it before I became a recruiter, as I was a hiring manager or working with others on talent. And so they're really relevant. And hopefully I'll kind of address some of this as we go through there. So this is the current situation. And probably the first thing in mind is, couldn't you have found a better font to put that in? Well, the reality is that's a cut and paste. And it's a cut and paste from a issue of the military engineer, SAME, back in 1954. So almost 70 years ago, real quick math in public there, almost 70 years ago, this is what we said. And briefly it said we need 40,000 engineers in the US with less than 20,000 available. And guess what? That includes what the military needs, not what industry needs also. So we've got to have these engineers to be able to succeed in this country. That's 70 years ago. Well, obviously, 70 years past that point, we haven't folded up and gone away. So we managed to do that throughout our time. But what I want to kind of highlight that this is obviously a systemic issue in our nation about the creation, care and feeding, maturation, and execution, and the final implementation of engineers as you go out there. Hopefully no executions. So what do the numbers say now? Rough numbers. And then I took this from various sources out there. The previous president of ASCE said that they need 25,000 new civil engineers throughout the decade to meet the requirements. And that does not include IAJA, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Bottom line is that number is probably woefully lower than it really should be right now, as I sit there and survey the requirements that are out there. Same thing with electrical and electronic engineers, mechanical engineers as you go through there. And again, you're not even taking into account most likely because this data is dated out of BLS, Bureau of Labor and Statistics, that the implementation of electric vehicles, of wind energy, of solar generation, the growth that is happening in these areas, even potentially nuclear and smart grids and everything else that is happening. And so that number is probably even higher. And then you get into construction. The engineers are great, but you got to build this stuff. And that number, that previous number said that they're 350,000 short. And I've heard numbers as high as 800,000 short as you go through there. So bottom line is there's not a lot of folks out there to be able to do the job. So let's talk about military in transition as a resource. And the reality is that rough numbers, bear with me, I'm going to go off the top of my head here, about 1.2 million people in the military. Of those, you probably have about 100,000 engineers. And I do engineers in air quotes because that includes the officer and enlisted engineers, those people who've worked on both the technical aspects as well as the implementation aspects of engineering as you go through there. Of those numbers, probably rough numbers again, about 20% a year, 20,000 engineers every year. And again, all breadth and depth of engineer come out of the service and are looking for opportunities as you go in there. So again, this is why we want to talk about those 20,000 being a resource. That number may be high, that number may be low based on the ebb and flow as you go in there. But the bottom line is there are a lot of folks coming out of the service who are looking for a job. So I took this slide from one of my friends, Don Gleason, who's very into military transition and working with not just military engineers, but all military in transition out of the San Antonio. And he's a member of kind of a regional SAME group in San Antonio and Texas area that looks at the veteran requirements. And so in a lot of cases, he wanted to kind of highlight what the military bring as it goes through there. We're, again, being military, I want to speak like we. They're very driven as far as their goals are. They're very trainable as they go in there. They understand as leaders how to collaborate and operate. You know, a lot of times the military mindset of like, well, they're down there, they're doing the mission, everything else. Today's environment, having spent a lot of time in a very dynamic environment, as I know many of you have, it is not one that fosters going down a single track by yourself. You've got to work with others. You've got to organize. You've got to think. And that's an amazing skill when you come into the business world of being able to look and chase different things and operate in a distributed environment. Same thing with education and with stress management. No one can argue that stress management is one of those things that we deal with a lot in the military. And it's one that they're very good about managing with timelines, time requirements, prioritization, etc. For analytical, we also have special incentives as we go through there. So we work closely about special employment incentives. We have the ability to go out there and add certain skill sets to require us as we go in there, as well as bring a unique ability to capture work as we approach that. Now, a couple of the other things that we highlight here, we can operate autonomously in there, but inside of our area, our tax incentives to stay military. I want to talk a little bit about why that's important as you get into the compensation area. Last but not least, a little bit into the fact that while military are dedicated and resilient, they do require a little bit of care as they go into the transitional phase. And hopefully we'll address that a little bit too. Well, real quickly, this again from Don as we go through there. A lot of people in military transition, this is my personal observation as well, because I got out of the military, joined a great company in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina, and stayed with that company for about 9 months. It was a great company, but it just wasn't a good fit for me, and I wasn't a good fit for their culture, just because they were pursuing different things than I was used to. Reality is, for military, about 45% of them leave their first job within 12 months, and 65% leave within the first 24 months. There's a really great resource there. If you have an opportunity, I would definitely check out that website. but they go through the whole military transition as well as spouse transition as they move around a lot as they go through there. And by the way, just real quickly, a side jot here, military spouses bring an amazing capability. Many of them work with a lot of them. They bring licenses, they bring skill sets. That's definitely an avenue to pursue as well as you're in the conversation with military. What do their military spouse bring to the table? Let's go through there. But a lot of cases, why people would change jobs is it's a mismatch. It's a mismatch of the leadership styles. In some cases, they're very used to one leadership style, and it's hard to transition to a different leadership style. The company values. This is why it's so important to have those conversations about what does the company value, how do they value their people, what do they focus on, how do they do things. But most importantly, it's the role with what they desire to do. In a lot of cases, coming out of the military, we didn't quite know what we wanted to do. And so we thought we were pursuing what we wanted to do, but we didn't quite think that didn't quite know what that role was. And then we actually got into the position of doing it. And so understanding the job is absolutely critical. Last but not least, we felt like we were undervalued. And whether it was undervalued by what we brought to the table or whether it was by what we were compensated or whatever else that involved. But undervalued is one of the things that's worth definitely having a conversation with somebody to understand. We'll talk a little bit about compensation to kind of help you understand that part of what undervaluing means. So real quickly, I'm not going to go through this too long, but let's talk a little bit about comparing. So Don brought up his slides there, and I want to bring up specifics as we go through there. In the military, mission drives action, whereas after you're in transition, business drives action. The bottom line is very important if you're going to be into a business environment with the AEC area. Mission, though, is part of that subset that they're going to think about even as they're driving the business. Military is used to frequent change, but once you take that uniform off, whether through retirement or through separation, it's not always a good thing to be transitioning when you're in the civilian world. Matter of fact, moving jobs 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 years. There's probably a few people in this webinar who've had a job change every year for like 4 years in a row. Whereas if you looked at a resume with that, on the civilian side, you'd be going, I'm not sure about this person. Every time he gets in a job, he's gone after 8, 10, 12 months to go through there. So change is not good. That's a reworking of the mindset. Constant education happens in the military. We're always training our people. We're always educating as we go through there. Where in this case, it's about maintaining competency, technical competency as they go in there. So when they enter the civilian workforce, they've got to work on making their existing skill set sharper, sharpening up and learning skill sets that they don't have that contribute to the overall business. Regulations control what you do. Trust me, there's a billion pages of regulations out there that we're operable to. Whereas this case, business and innovation drives work. Now, that's not to sit there and say that what the government or I'm not discounting what is inside the FAR, so please don't think that. But the bottom line is each company looks at what they can do and execute. They're not very regulated on every single action they take within the company. Military have little say while they're serving and what the next job is. Whereas after transition, that next job is absolutely paramount. In other words, they have many opportunities open to them. So that next job to them is probably the most important decision they're going to make after their military service. Oops. Frequent family separations, they're used to being gone. They're used to kissing them at the airplane door, and they're used to seeing them if they come off the airplane a year or more later. Whereas in this case, family time becomes very important. You'll find military are really hard about trying to stay with family, not spend a lot of time away from family, because over the course of a 20-year career, for example, for 26 years, my wife and I spent about a total of about 7 years apart from deployments, remotes, requirements of the job, etc. That's a long time to be married and not actually spend time together. So family becomes a very hard focus, and they're going to ask about that. Pay and vacation are set, whether you're the most junior airman or soldier, veteran, Marine in the service, you get 30 days. You retire, you get that same 30 days, and your pay is very well known. When you come out of the military, it's negotiable. In a lot of cases, military don't quite know how to negotiate that, and they don't quite know what the company's standards are for PTO, which sometimes becomes one of the major sticking points out there. For military, start fast, work hard, finish strong, because a assignment is a defined period of time, or a mission is a defined period of time. So they're working hard to stay within those areas as we go through there. Whereas, and coming out of there, continuous hard work is where you kind of get into it. Ultimately, they're trying to start fast, but work hard, but continue to grow and move forward. For the military, it starts at 40 hours a week. And on the other side, the 40-hour week is an expectation that they come out of there. Now, in many cases, They come to your company, they may not be doing 40 hours a week. They may be doing 50, they may be doing 60 based on the requirements. They may be surging and flowing. But this is one of the things to have them understand as you have the conversations. 40 hours a week or more is expected when they're wearing a uniform. When they come out of there, they're thinking 40 hours is what I'm going to work that while I'm there. That's what they expect. Little bit to choose location. Well, once again, just like family, location becomes absolutely paramount when they're out of the service. They want to know where I'm going to live, what's going on. As you talk to someone who's retiring, they may be focusing on where their kids are going to be graduating, where they're going to go, where their family is, where their parents are, etc. So location to them is absolutely paramount. More time, honestly, in the military means less technical expertise. I did my initial technical design work as a young lieutenant, and quite frankly, didn't do any real design work. I knew things, but as far as actually designing things, didn't do anything for the next 25 years after that. Whereas in the civilian side, more time means more technical proficiency. So they've got to definitely build up and learn how to grow their technical proficiency as they come into the other side of the coin. Again, more time is more leadership as we go on the military side. Whereas again, same thing on the civilian side, more time is more leadership, but they've got to understand what that leadership is and where they fit inside the equation as they go in there. You may come in out of the service, be a great, lieutenant colonel, but think that SVP role is a perfect role for you. But the reality is somebody else has been in private industry and been working 26, 28 years for that same position, and they have a definite background in that area. So you've just got to gauge expectations and help them understand. And again, with the military, there's a defined end date. We know we want to have a retirement if it's the 30th year of your service or if it's the into the 4 year enlistment. So again, defining it, whereas on the other side, there's no defined role. And quite frankly, you may work and then transition to a job that's part-time from there as you go in there. So real quickly, I want to kind of boil down real quick what's in their paycheck and go through there. And I'll kind of roll through this thing instead of kind of have it build. Let's go in there. So I'm not going to walk through these numbers because you can go find them yourself. The reality is, this is the 2024 pay tables. There's a 5.2% pay raise. That was authorized by Congress and approved for 2024 that the military are going to see across the board to go in there. And then their housing allowance is something that's predicated on where they live. So based on the cost of housing, based on the cost of rents, and I will go through all that machination. But the bottom line is that they come up with a number what they pay them. That allotment, entitlement, is a tax-free entitlement. So they have their base pay and they have their entitlement. And then, believe it or not, they're also paid for food. By the Constitution, they're authorized to have food and board as they go in there. And so they're given a certain amount of money for food every month. And that's also a tax-free entitlement as they go in there. So ultimately, as you see, a electrical engineer with 10 years in is making $92,000 and doesn't have a PE, but his total compensation is 122, which quite frankly, a little bit off the line, but not too far off the line from what I see in my day-to-day operations in private industry. Same thing with that senior civil engineer with a PE and PMP living in San Antonio. Their total compensation is around 201, and maybe a little bit out of line with what we're seeing as you go in there. The big difference is, as you see at the bottom, is that senior civil engineer may also have a retirement paycheck that contributes to that quite well as you go in there based on not only their VA disability, but also what their retirement check as they go in there. So ultimately, bottom line is what you kind of understand is you look at one of your potential military transitioners, it's always a good idea to understand what their financial expectations are, where they're at now, and as you go through there, you can kind of demystify what the numbers are. So let's talk a little bit about marketing as we go through there. And this is one of the things that I kind of get into where I'm at in my job jar. Marketing to me is absolutely critical as you go in there. And you say, well, marketing what? I'm marketing my company. I'm marketing our capabilities. Well, marketing your job, because there are no more interviews with 30 candidates lined up, all of them equally qualified in some cases. There may be in other industries, but quite frankly, in talking to a lot of folks out there and working with a lot of folks out there, you've got 2 or 3 or 4 good candidates, maybe less than that. And quite frankly, a lot of them have got 2 or 3 3 or 4 good opportunities out there that they're trying to sit there and look at. So there's 2 ways to look at it. You're driving down the road, you're doing 55 miles an hour. Well, let's be honest, you're doing 70 miles an hour, but hopefully you're below the speed limit. And you're feeling kind of thirsty. And you look up and you see a bulletin board, a billboard up there, and you go, oh, Coke, can't break the rule thing. So you go, I want a Coke. It's going there. Now, you're driving down that same highway, you're doing 70 miles an hour, and you're feeling kind of thirsty, and you see this instead. And I'll do the build on it real quick. Hey, enjoy a stimulating paddle bit of diet of Coca-Cola, and a perfect way to slake your thirst. There's a lot of stuff to digest in a short period of time. And how do most people look for jobs these days? Well, that mobile device that they've got on their hip and their pocket, or that iPad that they're looking at the end of the day is how they look at it. And this is, I'm not going to compare it to dating apps, but they're very similar in some ways because I've never used any app. But the reality is, this is one of those things as you go through there is that they are going to spend about less than 5 to 10 seconds looking at the job to start with to see if it's a match. And after that, they're going to move on because there's so many out there. So the reality is you've got to be able to market to them very quickly to grab their attention to go in there. So this is one of the things I want to show you. And I don't try to read this. You can look at the slides later on. But this was an actual job ad, not from anybody in our industry, but for a civil engineer with an EIT and maybe a PE that was I found on one of the job boards, and it was significant. The bottom line, as I read through this thing, is that they wanted everything but to know what their blood type was and if they're able to work on Sundays. There's a lot of information here, and if I'm looking at jobs out there, as much as I want to get that perfect job, I get something like this, and the next thing I want to do is I'm going to swipe right. I'm going to go to the next job because this is too hard to try to even decipher. And as you look at things, and I did this with a military perspective, but it's important that you do this because you're trying to get their attention. You need to build and work with your HR community to build this thing so that it sells the job. Let's go in there. Now, I did this with using Bing AI, which I think is now Copilot. But bottom line is you need to say, what is the job? What do they do? What do they need to have? And the key thing in this is what is absolutely required. If it's required to have a BS in engineering or architecture or community planning, then lay it up front. If it's not required, then make sure you highlight the fact that it's not required. If it's highly preferred, definitely highlight that. If it's something you'd like to see, highlight that. And then real quickly, you can say the job will and give them 15 different bullets out there, or you can tell them in clear text, hey, this is what you're going to do in this job. You're going to partner, you're going to grow, you're going to demonstrate, you're going to receive, etc. And that thing needs to be something where they swipe to the next ad and look at it and they go, you know what, this is pretty good. I think I'm going to put my name in this. And if it's on something like LinkedIn or Indeed, where they can apply through this portal, all the better as they go in there. So think about that ad because the ad's absolutely critical. Now, let's talk a little bit about the interview as you go in there. And this is another one of those things that you really got to spend a little bit of time talking about as you go in there. The interview, and I've got the word interview up here, but the reality is it's really a conversation because, and I've been through about 120 of these things so far in my current role as you go in there, probably about 30 or 40 so far after I retired as you go in there. This is something where, go back to what I talked about marketing. This is where you talk about your job. And if the HR team or the interviewing team doesn't have somebody who's spent time in the military or doesn't have somebody who's been closely associated with the military, consider bringing in an interpreter or whatever else to kind of help with that. Because again, the candidate, and I'm talking about the military candidate, their thought processes, nomenclature, positions, everything else is going to be based on their experience while wearing a uniform and doing their job as they go through there. So they don't understand, and I'll tell you this for a fact, most military people have no clue what BD is while they're in, and I'll say this unless you're probably a district commander or run a NAVFAC area for the very simple reason that it's not something we deal with on the business side. They don't understand all that part of things, but they do understand the components inside BD in different areas. And so ultimately, think about how you're having this conversation with somebody and go in there and think too about making this conversation as comfortable. It's simple things like, hey, tell them, you know what, feel free to wear a nice collar shirt or a polo. We'll be in polos, so feel free to dress appropriately. They're not going to sure how to do it. So put them at ease. Definitely we're okay with teams, so make sure you've got the area secure, things quiet as you go through there, whatever you feel comfortable with. But use the opportunity in the initial opportunity to engage them on an interview to set their mind at ease on how they can be successful and present themselves successful to you. So again, I kind of hit on this already, that I changed the slides to go in there. But the other thing about this is a two-way street. Now, I've seen the standard conversation that I've seen is questions, introduction to the company, questions back and forth, and then what questions do you have for me? And the ones that I've seen be the most successful have been an engaging two-way dialogue throughout the conversation. One is because have the opportunity not just to market at the end, but to market and talk about the job throughout their roles, their responsibilities. And in a lot of cases, they're trying to demystify this job that they're going to potentially get into. You can also draw out from them what they've worked on before and draw a comparison of what you've worked on now. If they're working on, say, a weapon system bed down, and before they were stationed so over in Europe and they were the program manager for an F-35 bed down at base X, then you can talk about what they saw on their side, tie that to what you're doing on your side, and have them understand that, oh, I've seen that. I've just seen that on the different side. And I feel comfortable with what you're asking me to do on this side as you go in there. And then the last thing I'll do is I want to talk about the cycle. So from the time that I get an email to the time I show up at the office with my briefcase in hand, and I do that air quotes because I don't think anybody shows up in an office with a briefcase in their hands anymore for their first day. And then at the time that I walk out the door on my 91st day of employment, there's definitely a cycle of engagement that we want to talk about on how you can be successful as you go in there. So let's talk first about the interview cycle. I've talked a little bit about interviewing before, but let me kind of dwell or dive into this, excuse me, as I go through there. So the very first thing in any kind of interview is tell them who you are and what you like about your company. You're not there because you hate the company. You're not interviewing somebody with the company because you hate the company. You're there because you're trying to attract others like you who bring a great skill set to come and work with you and work for your company. Tell them why you like your company. Hey, we have Taco Tuesdays. We have a great time. We're an ESOP. Explain ESOP to them if you're an ESOP, because it's really confusing to some people. We're privately owned. We're employee owned. We've got benefits like this. Whatever it is that makes your company stand out, lay the groundwork early in the conversation, okay, to see if that helps them in setting a positive way forward. And then somewhere in the conversation, tell them why, what is important to them about this job? Is it, I get to work remotely? I'm looking for something to help me put my kids through college. I really want to develop a skill set that I feel after 20 years of being an engineer kind of atrophied, which is the technical side. I'm really excited about working with local municipal people and developing their infrastructure. Hit on what is important to them, and I draw all those parallels with them. We're working in this area, we're working in that area. We have the ability to expand in this area, but that's going to also help cement and plant the hook, so to speak, in fisherman terms, about why you're interested in them and why they should be interested in you. Again, I hit on it before. There's a lot of jobs out there and a lot of civil engineer jobs, and a lot of project manager and program manager. Tell them why yours is better. And it's going to kind of cover those first two blocks, but also tell them about what you're working, what projects you're working, who you're going to be working with, where you see them fitting in the organization. And some of this you may not be able to answer, but talk about what people have worked on in the past and tell them this is something that, like similar, which it would be working on as well. Because ultimately, they've got coming out of the military, and I think we're going to mention the transition workshop coming up here on the 14th to the 16th of February, which is a great opportunity. If you haven't been to that thing, definitely go to it, or see if you can get someone to let you go to this thing. But they're going to have a lot of opportunities to talk to a lot of people about jobs. And most military people coming out in transition, I strongly recommend to them, you guys need to have at least 3 jobs or 3 opportunities lined up, if not more, to make sure you can compare and contrast that as you go in there. So talk about why your job is better, what you do about that, and tell them where they fit inside the job, and not just the job, but give them some specifics. You'll be working for Bob and Susie in this area, and you'll be working with the folks up in Alaska and the folks over in the who are working with the folks in the Pacific, and your area of responsibility in the Northwest. Help them understand that. And if you don't have that solidified, again, give them what you can give them. Ask the question, and ask a hard question. Construction, I'll use that for example. A lot of jobs in construction require, especially if they're doing work in the military construction side, they require that they have the CQMC, the Construction Quality Manager certification from the Army Corps of Engineers, and an OSHA 30-hour certification. Those are required, but it's a job. Require that as a preferred. Make sure in the conversations you go into them, if they've got time, tell them, man, it would really be great if you start down the trail for getting your PE, getting your PMP, getting your OSHA 30, getting whatever it is go in there. So it's important to be able to, you've got time with these folks, hopefully, to help them set up themselves for success and seeing if they can kind of get through the preferred barriers and get those things done, or at least start down that trail if you need to have it. If it's required, that's different. Ask for work samples. You talk to somebody who's got 26 years of service, they probably got a few work samples they can share with as long as they can redact them accordingly. But it's not a bad thing to ask somebody for, hey, give me a presentation you created. Where have you done a action plan on something? Give me a couple of memos you've done. How do you construct your emails? Again, it's not a bad thing to ask them for quality work that they've done to allow you to assess that, and two, it allows them to brag on what they've done as well. And then last but not least, a couple companies I've seen have a special meeting where they do the work packages or the benefits packages conversation. But even during the initial interview or the secondary interview, highlight quickly what's good about your benefits package. We know what's in the military side of things as we go in there, but the reality is there's different things out there with every different company. 401ks, there's deferred stock purchases, there's whatever else there is inside their medical, dental. But for them to compare apples to oranges as much as you can, boil it down to simples and tell them what you've got inside there. And as early as you can in the conversation, have somebody or you send them a copy of your benefits package. So they've got that and they can look at it real quickly and make sure they have any questions. So that's the conversation, the cycle of conversation that I've got as you go through the interview. Okay, great interview. They went out there and they accepted the offer. Everything's looking great. Let's talk about after the fact real quick. And I'm going to rush through these real quickly. So the bottom line is that first 90 days is absolutely critical as you go in there, because this is where you planted the hook, but this is where you're going to land the fish. And now it's important to keep the fish on the land, so to speak, and they become something else, air breathing fish. But the bottom line as you go through here is reach out immediately. They're very used to people contacting when they get a new assignment. Reach out immediately. Thank you for joining the team. Ask one of their coworkers to reach out. Hey, could you reach out to Bob or reach out to Susie and tell them that, introduce yourself and let them create a relationship, because they're going to have questions. Where's the closest vet? What's a good school district? How can I store my yogurt in the refrigerator and not get yelled at? But these are all things that kind of help ease that anxiety as they transition from the military to the civilian world as you go in there. Small things matter. Create a 90-day plan. And that 90-day plan may just be contact points in an email. It may be something exhaustive, whatever you want. But have a plan to make sure you touch base with your new employee and have others touch base. Have your senior leadership send them a note of encouragement, not at the start, but a month in, saying, hey, John, Julie, I've heard great things about how you're doing. We're so happy you're part of my team. We really appreciate it. Keep doing great stuff. That matters to people. It really does. And it makes them understand that that decision that they made was a good decision. Celebrate them on social media, put something on LinkedIn, say, hey, we really want to celebrate so-and-so joining us. And then after they've been there a while, encourage them to post. Say, I'm really happy to join this team, and continue those posts. I'm really happy I joined them. Hey, folks, I know you're coming out of the service. You still got some great opportunities here. Reach out if you're interested in talking to me, for all my friends in the military who are currently looking at the next step of life. And then again, like I just said, leverage that for the next hire. Make them part of that translator team on a next hire. They can kind of help. Hey, I just came out, been out for a year. I really love it here. Here's why it's good. Let me kind of help you understand what this means from your service. So real quick, explosive conclusion, so to speak. I jumped ahead about that one. So real quickly, we need engineers. Transition year and opportunities to go through there. You got to understand what they're thinking. You're not going to understand everything what they're thinking, because everybody's got their own thoughts. But a little bit of insight will help you go a long way to kind of overcoming those first few kind of stilted parts of the conversation, kind of unlock and unopen their concerns, their desires, their requirements, their needs, and kind of help that conversation flow. Market the job as you go in there. Make sure that they understand this is the job that they want and why they want it. Interview is your time to shine as well. Let's go in there and tell them why this job is relevant as you go through there. And then once they're on board, seal that deal with them. Keep working with them. So real quickly, kind of wrap up real quick. This is one of the things that I want to highlight is go in there. So what's the talent saying? If someone says, do they really appreciate my service? You know what? Reach out. Here's one thing I tell folks. If a veteran applies, and I've heard this so many times, I applied for a job with that company. I went to the portal. I put something in there. I never heard anything back. Or as a military person, and I don't want to talk to them anymore. I don't know how y'all do it within your CRM or your ATS system, your applicant tracking system, but somehow find a veteran who applied or find a military person in transition applied and send them a note that, hey, really appreciate you applying. You're not qualified for the job. We wish you the very best in your opportunity. That is huge to somebody because if they don't ever hear anything on an application they provided, and I've heard a lot of people do it, that cements in their mind a thought on the way forward. That company does not care about me. Next, money's not the only thing. Understand what the primary motivator is. They may be getting out of the service because they've got a sick loved one or they've got a parent that's aging that they need support. That is probably more critical to them than an extra $10,000 or whatever else is in there. Have the conversation, understand that. And again, you can't tell them, hey, what's important to you, but understand and draw out what they can. There can be offers that go in there. Expectations. If they've got expectations, ask what their goals are with the job. What do you want to see? How do you see yourself in 1 year, 5 years? What do you want to learn? What do you want to do? What do you want to add to your resume? How do you want to support others? What's going on? At the first interview, the last thing you should do to somebody is tell them, hey, we're going to take some time, sit down and have a conversation. We'll be back to you shortly. Or, you know what, we really appreciate your time. We'd definitely like to talk a little bit further. Give us about a week. We'll be back to you shortly. Or, you know what, thank you very much for your time. I don't think this is going to work, but we really appreciate what you're doing. And we wish you the very best in the future. Give them the next step because nothing's worse than a great, great interview followed by, yeah, you got what I'm saying there. So again, this is one of the things that's absolutely critical. Next, why is it so hard to respond? And a lot of times people tell me, I got an invite or I got an offer letter and then I hear nothing for a couple of weeks and then I have no idea what's going on. If they're a military person in transition, they've got a couple of months before they use up their terminal leave and then actually join the company. By all means, every once in a while, send them a note and say, hey, just checking in. How you doing? Everything's good? Any problems? And you know what? They're going to say, I'm good. Thank you very much. We're good. I'm going to say, don't bother me more, whatever. But the bottom line is those positive engagements, just a small email, programmed email, is going to go a long ways to when they walk in the door, they shake your hand and go, hey, thanks for the notes. I appreciate that. It really helps. And, again, are they happy I'm here? I gave you a plan. Think about that plan as you go in there. So, questions as I go through there? And I'll stop sharing my screen now to see what questions you might have.
Well, Ben, that was great. Really appreciate that, and thank you for sharing it. I know there's a lot that goes into the whole transitioning and the depth of the tasks, and then there's subtasks on top of that of really what you need to go into. So I know we still have a good amount of attendees on at the moment. So please, if you have any questions you'd like to answer or ask Ben, please feel free to use the chat. And ask away. So we have about 10 minutes or so for for questions. So Ben, one of the first ones right off the back, just out of pure curiosity, what was your first job that you ever had, and what was it like?
So yeah, the very first job I had ever was as a ice cream scooper at a Baskin Robbins, and I hate to say it, but that's probably the longest job I had. I worked there for about 8 years total, through high school and into college as you go in there, and learned a lot, like how to make a banana split. Still use that skill today. First job in the Air Force was I was an engineer assigned to at the time, the Air Force's largest hospital called Wilford Hall, and it was a great opportunity. But it was me and one other engineer, and all the rest of them were medical people. So took a little bit of learning as a brand new lieutenant on how that operated.
Great. Uh, when you work with a lot of transitioning veterans and they're trying to get their first job, where do you see there's a lot of excitement, a lot of commitment up front, but then there's usually maybe a gap on is it the follow-up? Is there a lack of interest? Where do you usually see where the motivation starts to kind of fall down, and what can individuals do to really continue to actually find those opportunities?
Great question, Whitney. And let me tell you, highlight one thing I didn't say. I want to kind of make sure people understand it. One thing, I do not recruit transitioning military at all. I don't. The bottom line, the reason why I don't recruit them is I want to make sure they can get the best pay package and benefits package without having a recruiter involved in the process. So I advise and assist. I'm happy to introduce. I don't recruit them for that reason. But one of the key things go in there, especially when you start talking to somebody, let's just give you a cycle. Someone thinks they want to get out of the military in, say, January, February. We use a transition workshop as a good example. They're going to have the transition workshop in February. They're going to most likely leave the service in wearing a uniform in June, but actually leave the service at the end of October as they go in there based on the leave they have saved up there. If there's a spark made at the transition workshop and they understand this, in a lot of cases, what is the best benefit of the hiring official is to say, look, here's our plan. We don't know where you're going to be placed. We've got to understand what our business plan looks like, but we're really interested in you. Let's continue that dialogue. Let's keep talking to you. And so it may be just a once a month program call for 15 minutes. Hey, we're still definitely interested in you. Looks like the plan's kind of solidifying. But even that 15-minute call will be go a long ways to kind of helping them understand, you know what, let me keep them on the radar. It's when the comms drop off completely as they go, they've got a end date. They're going to be a sell by date. If they don't have a job by that 31st of October date, then they're going to like, well, I can't go on unemployment. What do I do? So the bottom line is that engagement allows them to keep you on their list and ensures that as you get into the conversation side, you're going to have probably have a senior position in their minds of their consideration as opposed to a company they just engaged recently on an opportunity. Well, I've been talking to these guys for about 6 months. They've really been kind of reaching out to me and talking to me. I really definitely want to kind of go that direction, but I'll hear what you have to say.
Great. No, that's a very valid point. So you did mention something called the SkillBridge. Could you dive a little bit more into SkillBridge?
Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't actually mention SkillBridge directly, but as I've talked to them before, I've talked to people who've been through SkillBridge. SkillBridge is a DoD program that is supposed to. If I've got anything wrong here, people please jump in. Sponsored and supported by the Department of Labor, and basically it's a transitional program that's run. It can run anywhere between 3 and 6 months, depending on where they're at. It allows the military member to join a company and spend time with them forming a function for them while still under the DoD roles. So in essence, I'll give you an example. I worked with a military person who's in transition. That person went to a company, it was an engineering company, worked with them for about 3 months, and then ultimately ended up signing with the engineering company and working with them further. Whereas another person worked with a different SkillBridge company. They had that person doing something on programming where that person was a civil engineer. And ultimately, at the end of this 3 months, they said, thanks, not a good compatibility and skill set. So one thing I'll tell folks, if you're going to do a SkillBridge program, make sure in SkillBridge that you target and are very clear about the kind of person you want transitioning out of the military. If you're looking for somebody who understands civil 3D and can do hydrology studies, good possibility you're not going to find somebody that from a 20-year lieutenant colonel or Navy commander that left that technical stuff behind. But if you're looking for a program manager or project manager to go out there, that's definitely what you want to target that time frame. So think about what you want. Talk to somebody who's been in the military. Help them kind of focus that SkillBridge look in there and see if you can pick up somebody that way.
Yeah, I have a good friend that's just getting in. I think he's this week or next week he's jumping into his SkillBridge, so he's really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I heard great things about it. So it's a really good way to do that transition.
Yep. From the looking at qualifications a little bit. So, what kind of qualifications are really needed when transitioning? Do you need certain licenses? And are there options for training while you're serving?
Absolutely. Great question. So this is one thing I'm telling everybody. If you're getting out of the service, if you're an engineer and you have your EIT, start studying for your PE and start getting those things together to be able to test for your PE, whether you're in the service or out. The minute you leave the service, you lose access to all these people who could be a reference on your PE exam as you go in there. And could quite frankly be a reference for you to do reciprocity for another state. So definitely start on that PE early if you haven't already. And if you haven't done the EIT, get the EIT done. Yeah, it requires some studying. Other things, PMP, Certified Energy Manager, Certified Emergency Manager, Certified Construction Manager. All look into these different things because if you're an enlisted member and you want to do construction, there are a number of different skill sets that are worth looking into and see what you can find. So what I would say is, as I understand it, there's a DoD, and I'm fortunate just coming out of the back of my head, but there's a DoD skills training program out there that has the ability to do certifications, training programs, things like this. It's definitely seeing what is available for you to do while you're in active service. Get those certifications while you're in active service, or if not, start to assemble. Most of them, all of them require experience, require references. Get those references and experiences assembled so that when you leave the service, you can immediately jump on getting your package in or put your package in ahead of time so that you can test as soon as you have an opportunity.
Great. Uh, by the way, if there's any other questions that anyone wants to ask, feel free to drop them in the chat. And again, if you want to save the chat, just feel free to open the file and go to save and then click on chat. So there's a lot of great connections and people adding their contact information in. So feel free to just save the chat so you can go back and add their information. Got one more question in here. And so what platforms, venues are available for, say, interfacing with or reaching out to transitioning talent? Not just for engineers, but also maybe enlisted or trades oriented individuals.
Another great question. So what I really strongly suggest is look at your state. Most states, for example, for those of you who are in Virginia, and I think most of you are in Virginia, the DMV area, Virginia has a very good veterans program in there, and they actually have some transitional meetings that they have around at Virginia Beach at Fort. Apologize, it's not Fort Lee anymore, but the new military installations out there, Langley and others, as go in there. Look at the state website, find out Veteran Affairs as they go in there, and find out what transitional programs they have available for you, and then definitely go attend one of these. It's a lot like the transition workshop. You get a table, you get 1,000 resumes. I was at one at Virginia Beach at Norfolk, and I talked to probably 50 veterans and military spouses and military members in transition. Not one of them was an engineer as went there, but it was a great opportunity to talk to them. But definitely look at those folks, see what they've got, see if they have the ability to work with you to get the word out to military installations. Talk to the folks in the installation at the career centers in those areas, see what you can find out there. But I would strongly recommend starting at the state. The other thing I would recommend too is, SAME is a great organization, and they're doing a lot to try to reach out to people on job opportunities. They've got job boards posted, they've got other areas, they've got the different posts out there. But work within that area and get the word out from SAME members to the military installation. Said, hey, if you're getting out and you've got a construction background, I'll give you a good example real quickly. I got contacted by a young man who is an aircraft maintainer. He said, hey, I really want to try something in construction. I gave him some names, made some contacts. He's now doing, and it's all pro bono, but he's now doing as an assistant superintendent out there, even though he's got no background in construction. So in a lot of cases, there are people with the skill set to lead in a complex environment who just haven't done it before. See if those people are interested in that opportunity. If you can reach out there, you can do that through those military departments of the state and through the installations directly.
Well, I appreciate that little, SAME little kudos there. So yeah, I wouldn't say that's how we got you on here, but like, hey, don't worry, we appreciate.
Well, I'm a member of the Blue Ridge Post, so I'm
Oh,
big fan
okay.
of SAME. Been one
Right.
for about 40 years.
And are you going to be at the transition workshop in
Yeah,
February up in?
absolutely. Yeah, we're going to be there. That location, I'm just advising, assisting. So I'm the guy in the corner, just telling people what I see, what I'm hearing, and giving them advice. Kind of some of what I've done here as well.
Okay, and then one last question. If I always think that LinkedIn profiles and LinkedIn presence are incredibly important. If there is one takeaway you would tell everyone to say, hey, you really should have this on your LinkedIn profile, like what is that one actionable item that they actually need to do?
I'll give you 5. I love that
Well,
question.
I think we would be here all day if you could
Yeah,
give
but
5.
they're quick.
Like,
I
if you
promise.
want to go 5, knock it out of the wood, but go right ahead.
Proofread your LinkedIn profile. Make sure you don't have any spelling errors in there. Make sure the dates make sense as you go in there because a recruiter looks at the dates. Make sure if you're going to put any kind of a resume in there that it's relevant, it's current, and it's up to date as you go in there. If you're going to put skills in there, make sure the skills are relevant to what you're looking to do as you go in there. And last but not least, take a good picture. And you know that green circle that says open to work? Do not freaking put it on your LinkedIn profile for the very simple reason that that is an attractor for all type of recruiters to go out there and hit you for every single job out there. So be
Yes.
discerning, be straightforward, be correct in your LinkedIn profile. That treat it like it's your resume, and there's 5,000 hiring officials looking at it. Make sure it stands out. That's quick.
No, that's great. I mean, there we go. Great, a great idea. And one last thought on the transition workshop. There will be both military and industry there as well, correct?
Yeah, there's a few veterans that show up, but mostly I've seen is primarily military, more senior military folks in the transition, a few junior military, mostly officers, and I've seen a couple of enlisted last year. So we're getting more participation. It's gonna be a great thing. Really excited
Okay.
about it.
Well, great. No, I appreciate that. And then you'll have your contact information so if people want to contact you individually.
Yeah, please do. Happy to talk to
Yeah,
anybody.
absolutely. So that's great. So we're gonna wrap up questions now. And so thank you everyone for joining and participating in today's session. We really appreciate your time here today. Definitely been very informative. For us, and I appreciate the takeaways. Again, the LinkedIn presence I think is always very powerful. But again, where can you really take the necessary steps to start building towards um, getting your career path where you want to take it. We have a lot of interesting interest from our participants here today. So, but before we wrap up our program here today, I'd like to share some of our upcoming events that we have planned. So please mark your calendar for some of the upcoming local post events as well as some of the national events that we have for us. So our next First Friday session will be on Friday, February 2nd. As always, all registered participants will earn 1 hour of a PDH certificate. So learn how to solve humidity control problems using the new ASHRAE design guide for GSA and DOE innovation programs and technology with the presenters Andy Lynch and Jem Meacham from the Academy Energy Group and Altair Systems. So registration is now open. And then, are you interested in sharing any of your knowledge on current educational topics on the First Friday series with our members? So we are accepting presentations applications for this year. So go to our website and submit your topic today. And sponsorships are also available if you'd like to support our popular program. And so now please join us on our 28th annual awards program on Tuesday, January 30th at the National Press Club. Our post awards will be celebrating to all of our members throughout the AEC industry, and we'll celebrate the achievements as well for our junior enlisted and junior officers across all 7 branches of the uniformed services during our military service branch awards. And so you don't want to miss this exciting opportunity to grow your network and celebrate the achievements of individuals and firms. So you can register today for individual tickets, and there are discounted tickets available for members as well as group tickets and sponsorship opportunities. So now on Tuesday, February 20th, the DC Post does a salute our military during Military Appreciation Game Night when the Washington Capitals take on the New Jersey Devils. You can purchase a ticket or sponsor the event today, and you're helping us donate 50 tickets to our military, and you can join the game night with us. So we got 30 tickets in section 419 to gather, build our networks, and cheer on the Caps or the Devils, depending on who you like, but mainly the Caps. Ticket holders will get a DC event t-shirt with our sponsored logos and a Caps hat. So we hope you can join us in a fun event. And finally, the wait is over. The DC and Nova Post 16th Annual Small Business Conference starts. You can register starting on Tuesday. This premier one-day conference is returning to Capital Turnaround in Navy Yard. And we have a great lineup of government agencies that share the latest opportunities and challenges to help you fill up your GovCon pipeline. So build your network and focused around small business, teaming, and opportunities at this event that's going to be held on Wednesday, April 24th. Exhibit booths and sponsorship opportunities are available. And we got 4 notable events that are hosted by SAME National. As first, we talked about with the Career Transition Workshop. Virtual sessions begin on January 16th, and then the in-person is going to be held in Maryland mid-February. You can gear up for this program by attending our January with this event. And then the event will be for those who want to leverage their skills and accomplishments for transitioning military, as well as those who are looking to start a career in the AEC industry. And then Capital Week is just around the corner as well. That is held the last week of March. So you can get your tickets to the one-day event. You can meet the leaders throughout the government agencies to get an outlook on the latest policies and opportunities that are aligned with congressional budgets and initiatives. So don't miss that event in March. And then if you know a rising sophomore, junior, or senior that's interested in hands-on learning for architecture, engineering, and construction, applications for the STEM engineering and construction camps are now open. It is located near one of our military installation around the country. And so the campers have an opportunity to receive a scholarship to attend one of the installations, as well as learn more about a career or make lifetime friends. So last year, the DC Post supported 8 campers with scholarships to attend. So don't miss out on the great opportunity and send a camper to a STEM engineering construction camp. Applications are due on March 15th. And finally, SAME JETC will be held in Orlando on May 14th and 15th. And we are looking forward to attending, and registration is going to open in the middle of the month. Make sure you take advantage of early bird discount by registering before the 15th of February. And be sure to visit our website to mark your calendar for other upcoming events that we have. We have 2 federal luncheons coming up, the USAID in Ukraine panel in February, as well as the Climate Resiliency and Electrical Infrastructure Program in March. So more to come on both of those programs. So thank you attending. Thank you for attending the Friday webinar series with Ben Wom, and for providing excellent content today for our webinar series. So please look out for the document delivery in your email inbox, your PDH certificate, and opt-in list of registered participants. And we will post a recording on our website later on this month. So again, thank you all. Have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you all out at a SAME event soon. So thank you all again, and take care.